The crack came out of nowhere. A sharp, dry snap like wood splintering beneath your feet. For a split second, my whole body froze, but not from the cold. It was instinct. The sound of ice breaking is unlike anything else. It doesn't echo. It sinks into your soul. I looked down and saw the first thin lines forming, like something drawing cracks beneath my boots. They were faint at first, but they multiplied fast, spreading in all directions. And there I stood alone, miles from the nearest shelter, realizing I was standing on a trap the earth had set in silence. The temperature hovered around 50 degrees, maybe lower. The skin on my face had been burning for hours. I'd left before dawn, like I always did, to check the traps on the ice and maybe catch signs of caribou. That's what we did this time of year. The surface had looked solid when I left home. The sky was clear, no storm in sight. The wind didn't howl, but there in the middle of that white expanse, I finally understood what my grandfather always said. When the Arctic goes silent, that's when it's most dangerous. The first crack shot between my legs and disappeared into the horizon. The sound came again, louder now, and I felt a slight give under my feet. It wasn't my first time on unstable ice, but this felt different. The smell. Yes, there's a smell when the ice is about to break. It's like damp metal mixed with frozen salt. The lower layer was melting, out of sight. Only the older hunters can sense it. Only the ones who've already lost someone. Squinted, took a deep breath and forced myself to move. Slowly. Every step had to be light, but sure, the wrong shift in weight could shatter everything. Then came the second crack, closer this time, right beneath me, like a muffled thunderclap, but personal. Intimate. The sound of death rising from below my feet. I tried to run. I couldn't. My left leg plunged down to the ankle. Ice water rushed into my boot. Freezing. Instant. Paralyzing. That's when panic hit. What was supposed to be a simple hunting trip had become a race against something I couldn't see. Couldn't predict. The ice, deceptive, cracked like thin glass. My mind screamed for me to run, but my legs were trapped by the stiffness of my clothes, the weight of adrenaline, the grip of fear. I screamed, not for help, because I knew no. One could hear me, but as a primal reaction, a scream more for me than for the world. The wind began to shift, not in direction, but in tone. It had a sharper edge now, like a warning. It started blowing from the side, flinging sharp snow into my face. Visibility dropped in minutes. The horizon vanished. Nothing but white. White in every direction. I was a dark speck surrounded by a formless abyss, and beneath me, the ice kept groaning. I tried to remember the old teachings. Never run on cracking ice, my uncle used to say. Spread your weight. Lie down if you have to. Feel the ice. It speaks. So I dropped to my knees, then onto my chest. The cold cut through my clothes right down to the bone. But it was that, or fall through. I crawled, inch by inch. The sound of cracking followed me, like it was tracking my every move, like it wanted to. Know how far can you go before you break? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't stop. Out there in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by a world that doesn't show mercy, the only thing I could do was keep going. My name is Nunik. I was born in Qikiqtarjuaq, one of the last places where time still moves with the rhythms of nature. I grew up surrounded by snow, silence, and stories. Stories whispered by the elders by firelight, while the wind howled outside and shadows of bears moved in the dark. From a young age I learned, living here isn't just about surviving the cold, it's about learning how to listen. My grandfather, Taktuk, was a respected hunter. He never had to raise his voice, his eyes said it all. He used to say the ice had moods, that the sky changed expressions like a human face, and that animals spoke with their bodies, their eyes, their tracks, never with words. I believed him, because he spoke like someone who had faced things most of us can't even imagine. As a child, I dreamed of the vastness. I wanted to go farther and farther. The white landscape didn't scare me. It called to me. I wanted to know what lay beyond. The mountains, beyond the frozen horizon. My father died when I was 10. He fell through the ice while hunting seals. The rope snapped. He was pulled under. He never came back. After that, the silence at home changed. It became heavier, colder. It was my grandfather who taught me how to build igloos, how to read the stars in the polar sky, how to sense when the ice is about to give way. I learned that the south wind carries bad news, that birds disappear before a storm, and that sometimes the northern lights seem to respond to our thoughts. He used to say, "The Arctic doesn't hate you, but it doesn't love you either. It just is. It's up to you to learn how to dance with it without being swallowed." By 18, I was hunting alone. I took pride in that, knowing my life depended solely on me. Every seal I caught, every fish I pulled bare-handed from beneath. The ice was proof that I belonged there. I never felt weak, never doubted myself, until that day. That morning seemed like any other. Clear skies, calm wind. I grabbed my gear, a small pack with dried meat, a bone knife, some seal fat for fire, and headed north. I knew where my traps were. I knew the land. The dogs were worn out from the last trip, so I went on foot. I wanted the silence. And the ID, silence welcomed me. I walked for hours. Time doesn't hurry in the Arctic. The daylight stretches across the sky like a wounded animal. I could smell the ice, taste the metal in the air. Walking there alone always gave me a strange sense of belonging, as if we were made of the same stuff, skin, bone, and silence. But something was off that day. The ravens didn't show up. They always circled the seal holes waiting for scraps. The ice dogs hadn't left any tracks either, and there was a strange mist, thin, almost invisible, that seemed to follow my steps. I ignored it. I thought I was prepared, thought I was bigger than the feeling in my gut. I remember stopping to rest. I knelt on the frozen sled of some long-abandoned expedition. You could still see knife marks and dried blood on it. Maybe it was a warning, but Inuit people don't fear the past. We carry the bones of our dead with respect, not superstition. Or at least that's what I believed. I pressed on for another 2 hours until I reached the frozen lake, a vast plain, endless. That was my destination. The trap was there, marked by a small wooden post. I approached. Everything seemed in order, but something inside me whispered otherwise. The wind shifted, and then I heard the crack. In that moment, when I felt the ice tremble beneath me, I realized it didn't matter who I was, how many stories I knew, or how many hunts I had survived. Nature doesn't care about resumes. It only tests. And that day, it was my turn. The ice gave way without warning. 1 second I was standing. The next, the ground was gone. Everything around me vanished into a blur of white and gray. It felt like falling into the mouth of a silent beast. There was no echo, only the sound of water swallowing me. My whole body plunged in, and the pain was instant, sharp, violent. It didn't come from my skin, but from deep inside my bones, like something was crushing me from within, draining my breath, my warmth, my life. The water was dark, colder than words could ever describe. An invisible current dragged me down, and the weight of my soaked clothes pulled me even deeper. I tried to swim, but my arms barely moved, as if glued to my sides. I thrashed, eyes wide open, searching for light above. I saw only shadows, bits of ice floating, white flakes drifting like they were mocking me. I opened my mouth to scream and swallowed water. It burned going down, like ground glass. My throat clamped shut. My lungs screamed for air, and in that instant, in the chaos and panic, one thought cut through everything with crystal clarity. This is how a man dies. Not with glory, not with honor, but drowned in the silence of the world while no one listens. I fought. I don't know how, but I did. My fingers searched for the hole I'd fallen through, My hands clawed at the jagged ice, desperate to hold onto something solid. But everything broke apart. Everything gave way. Each attempt was a lie. My body shook violently, muscles seizing beyond my control. The cold wasn't just around me anymore. It was inside me. It was a living thing invading me through every pore. Then I started to accept it. The idea of death came gently, like the still wind before a storm. My thoughts slowed. I saw my father's face, covered in snow, being pulled into the same waters years ago. Now it was my turn. Same water, same end. Was it fair? I didn't even ask. I just felt it. A heavy weight in my chest, and then almost peace. But something inside me screamed. Not with words. Something older, deeper, maybe passed down by generations who'd faced worse and survived. I felt a force that wasn't just mine, a calling, a blind impulse. With one last surge of will, I drove my fingers into the edge of the ice and jammed the knife from my belt into the frozen surface. The blade bit into the crust and I pulled myself up. My chest broke the surface. My arms were trembling. My legs, dead weight, hung useless beneath me. I screamed, a hoarse animal sound that tore through my throat. I kept pulling inch by inch. The ice cracked, but I didn't stop. I stabbed the knife ahead again, dragged myself forward. When I finally heaved my full weight onto the ledge, I felt the ice groan. But it held. I lay there gasping, face buried in the snow. The world spun around me. Every breath thundered in my chest. My body shook uncontrollably. My eyes were locked forward, unblinking. I didn't think. I didn't feel. I just was. Water streamed from my clothes, freezing into tiny rivers the moment they touched the ground. Time passed. I don't know how long I stayed there, but slowly my mind returned. And with it, panic. I was soaked. Sub-zero temperatures, miles from any shelter. And the wind. The wind had picked up. I tried to stand, but my legs didn't respond. I sat, hugging my knees. My body screamed for warmth, for movement. But everything in me whispered, just stop. Close your eyes. Let the cold take you. It would have been easy. So easy. But I remembered the promise I made to myself. To come back. Always come back. I stood up, took one step, then another. Every movement was agony. But I knew, if I stopped, that would be the end of my story. And the Arctic doesn't leave graves. It erases the names of fools. I don't remember how many steps I took before collapsing. Maybe 10, maybe less. My legs no longer felt like part of me. Just dead wood swinging from a hollow body. The ice groaned beneath me, but I didn't have the strength to hear its warnings. The snow hit my face like ashes from a dying fire. Every step felt like a dare against death itself. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just walking. When I fell, a second time, I didn't get back up. I lay on my side, my face pressed against the ice. The pain was a distant hum. My whole body throbbed, but it wasn't physical anymore. It was the sensation of an ending. A silent, frozen, inevitable end. And in that moment, right as my eyes began to close, something happened. I heard a voice, faint like a whisper caught in the wind, a voice I hadn't heard since childhood. My grandfather. He called my name. Not like a shout, but like a living memory. Unique. It echoed inside me, as if it came from somewhere, far beyond this world. I tried to open my eyes, but they were heavy. Still, I kept hearing him. First my grandfather, then my grandmother, then others. Voices I knew. Voices that no longer belonged to this time. It was like the elders had come, not to take me, but to remind me. I was still here. It wasn't time yet. Get up, boy, he said, just like he used to when I'd fall on the ice at 8 years old. The cold is part of you. It's not your enemy. It's your mirror. Words spoken decades ago, now rising at the edge of consciousness and death. and somehow they made sense. The cold wasn't here to kill me, it was here to shape me, to test me. I took a deep breath. The air sliced through my lungs like a blade. My chest rose. My fingers were stiff, almost frozen, but they still moved. There was still something alive in me. Slowly I rolled onto my back. The sky was gray, nearly silver. Snowflakes fell in perfect silence. It felt like time had stopped waiting for me to decide. I sat up. My arms shook. I used my knife to brace myself. And in that moment, I remembered something the elders always said on the coldest nights. When the world turns its back on you, lay your ear to the ground. The earth speaks, the old ones answer. So I did. I laid my face against the ice. It burned, but I listened. Not with my ears, but with something deeper. The ice vibrated. Not in anger, but in memory. Like it was, telling me others had come through this, and some had made it. I stood up. Slowly. One foot, then the other. My knees buckled, but I forced them to hold. I started walking again. Not in a straight line, not strong, but with purpose. Every step was a rejection of death, a declaration that I still belonged to the world of the living. The wind picked up. The snow thickened. It began to collect on my shoulders, my lashes, the seams of my coat. But something had changed. I wasn't afraid anymore. I felt a presence, as if I wasn't alone, as if those who came before me were walking beside me, invisible, but real. I remembered the story of Silek, the man who survived 3 nights trapped beneath an ice shelf, guided only by the voice of his dead sister. He came back saying the wind carries the spirits of those who never left the north. Some call that madness. But out here, madness and faith walk hand in hand. In the Arctic, everything is a matter of listening. From that moment on, every gust of wind, every tremor beneath my feet, every crack in the ice wasn't just a natural sign, it was a message. A signal that I still had a place in this story, that there was still a path forward, and that the old ones don't leave us. If we listen. I kept walking. I didn't know exactly where I was, but I knew I wasn't lost. My body was failing, but my spirit had started to fight back. And in the heart of the Arctic, it's the spirit that survives first. The wind shifted, not just in direction, but in intent. It changed from a sharp breeze to a living presence. No longer just weather, it was force. It was warning. The snow began to swirl around me like dust drawn in by some deep breath. The sky, once pale gray, darkened slowly like it was being covered by a thick skin. It was the arrival of what the old ones called kikik, the storm that never warns you twice. I knew that sound. It wasn't snow brushing against my coat or the distant cracking of ice. It was deeper, a low, steady roar coming from everywhere all at once. Like the earth itself was being swallowed by some ancient drumbeat. The light began to fade. It wasn't night yet, but Arctic daylight vanishes fast, pulled away by the furious white storm rolling in across the horizon. There was nowhere to hide, just a flat expanse of cracked ice, drifting snow, and a silence on the verge of being shattered. My body was done. Every step throbbed. My clothes, stiff with frost, clung to my skin like shattered armor. But I knew. Stopping meant signing my own death sentence. In the Arctic, a storm isn't just weather, it's judgment, and it judges without mercy. I remembered something old Kalunik once said, the last of the hunters who survived a 3-day kikik. He used to say the wind has eyes, that it sees those who doubt the land. And when the wind chooses you, it doesn't blow, it tears. I could feel it now, the eyes of the wind watching me. As if I'd been marked, I tried to keep moving. My boots sank into the fresh snow, light and deep. Underneath the ice was slick and deadly. Every step was a gamble. The world around me began to vanish. Distance meant nothing now. Everything was white, swirling in tight spirals. My vision shrank to just a few feet. Still, I kept going, then the snow slammed into my face hard. That's when I realized it wasn't falling. It was coming sideways. The wind had gained speed, and with it pain. Each flake was a needle, every gust a shove against my willpower. There was no direction anymore, no guidance. The compass was useless. GPS had died long ago. All I had left was instinct, and instinct said, survive. I bent low, kept my head down, walked with my body leaning into the wind, shielding my eyes with my arm. The ice groaned beneath me, but that wasn't my fear now. My fear was the white, the nothing. Because white can kill not by attacking but by hiding, by making you walk in circles, by making you forget you have a body, forget you're even human. At some point, time stopped mattering. Could have been an hour, could have been 10 minutes. Pain filled every part of me. My hands throbbed, my fingers were numb, my face stung. I could no longer feel the tip of my nose. My lips were cracked and stiff. I tried to speak out loud just to prove I was still real. Only the wind answered back. That's when I saw it, a rise in the ice, not a mountain, not a rock, just a ridge, uneven, but with a dark crack in the center. I almost missed it. It appeared in a break between gusts like a mirage, but I knew this was it, a chance, shelter, a pocket of space. Maybe a hole, maybe a grave. It didn't matter. I ran, or stumbled really. Each step was a win. The wind tried to yank me back. Snow stung my eyes, but I reached it. I slipped into the crack. Narrow, freezing, damp. It smelled like old ice, untouched by sunlight. I dropped down without thinking. My body slammed into the wall of the little cavity, but I was out of the wind. For now, lying there, I felt my breath return, harsh, uneven. But there, the storm raged just outside, screaming like some wild animal. And there I was, small, broken, but alive. Still alive. In the heart of that fury, I had found a sliver of silence. And in that silence, a thread of hope. The space was tight. I couldn't stand. I could barely move. I crawled inside like a wounded animal, scraping my knees on the frozen ground, my shoulders brushing the jagged walls. The air was thick, still. Dampness sealed in for who knows how many years. Inside, the silence was total, muffled by the storm's roar outside. It felt like time had bent around me, and all that existed now was the sound of my ragged breathing. In that dark, frozen hollow, I lay on the frozen ground, my back arched in pain. My soaked clothes clung to my skin. I was shaking so hard my teeth clattered violently. The pain in my extremities was unbearable. My fingers felt like stone. The tips of my ears and nose tingled. But I was still conscious, I could still feel, and as long as there's pain, there's life. I remembered the seal fat I kept on my belt, sealed in a small container. That might be the one thing standing between me and freezing to death before sunrise. With trembling hands, it took what felt like forever to get it out. My fingers barely moved. The latch was frozen solid. I used my teeth. Finally, it opened. Next to the fat was a small piece of dried moss. That was all I had to start a fire. My ancestors had done this every day, in the dark, in the wind, with death waiting just beyond the shadows. I had to do the same. I pulled a piece of flint from the inside pocket of my coat, struck it against my knife, and watched the sparks fly. 2, 3, 20 strikes. Nothing caught. The cold seemed to swallow even the heat of friction, but I couldn't stop. I kept going, endless minutes, until one spark landed and the moss glowed, faint but alive. I blew gently, slowly. The flame took shape, small but determined. The fat began to melt. A strong, pungent smell filled the hollow. Some would have found it revolting. To me, it was the smell of survival. I held my hands close, careful not to burn them. The warmth was minimal, but in that tight space, it mattered. Ice from my clothes began to melt, trickling down my legs in thin streams. I focused. Every second was precious. The darkness didn't scare me. I had grown up in darkness. What frightened me was what came after: the dawn, the renewed cold, the hunger. I ate a small piece of dried meat. Tough, frozen, hard to chew. But the taste of fat mixed with salty blood brought something back, something primal, a reminder that I was built to endure. There was no comfort here, no luxury, just the will to survive. And that was enough. The storm raged outside. The cave trembled now and then when the wind slammed into the opening. The sound was deafening, howls that seemed to come from invisible mouths. I felt fear, not of the wind, but of what it might carry. Voices, maybe. Cries. The screams of those who didn't find shelter in time. I tried to sleep, curled up, hugging my legs. My eyes were heavy, but my body ached, every muscle tight, every joint stiff. My mind wandered. Images came and went. My grandfather singing to chase away forest spirits, my mother treating a burn with seal oil and snow, the purple sky of dawn reflected on the ice, memories that felt distant, unreal. But in that moment, they were my only comfort. I closed my eyes for a few minutes, maybe hours. I dreamt I was walking across a frozen sea and heard footsteps behind. When I turned around, there was nothing, but the footsteps kept coming closer, heavier. I woke with a jolt. The flame still flickered. Water dripped from the ceiling. A thin layer of frozen mist covered my body. I knew I couldn't stay there forever. The cave had given me a chance, not a permanent refuge, but at least for a few hours I was more than a body about to freeze. I was someone who had made it through the first test. I noticed the storm losing strength. It was subtle. The wind's pitch changed. It came in slower bursts. The air felt slightly lighter. Maybe the worst had passed. Maybe dawn was near. Hope didn't feel like relief. It felt like pressure. Because now I had to go back out, walk, face whatever came next. But as long as that flame kept burning, I kept breathing. As long as the fire lived, the cold hadn't won. And as the wind screamed outside, in here, I remembered who I was. When I opened my eyes, the fire was out. All that remained was a wisp of smoke drifting in the cold air like a weary spirit rising in silence. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. My entire body was numb. My bones ached from the inside out, as if the cold had rooted itself deep within me. I blinked slowly. My eyelashes were frozen together with tiny crystals of ice. I tried to move my fingers, first my hands, then my feet. They responded. Slowly, but they responded. I was still in one piece. The silence felt different. It wasn't the same silence from the night before. It was cleaner, lighter, as if the world outside had finally started to breathe again. I leaned over and crawled to the mouth of the cave. The light outside was faint and blue-tinted, but it was there. The storm had passed. The wind had withdrawn its claws. A new day had begun. I felt the air brush against my face. Still sharp, but no longer furious. I took a deep breath. The scent of freshly settled snow, of ancient ice, of life hidden just beneath the surface. It hit me. Pure, harsh, and honest. Like everything out here. I stepped out slowly. Every movement felt like my body was being carved from stone. My clothes were stiff, creaking with each step. My knees buckled. My joints cracked, but I stayed upright. And when I finally stood tall and looked around, I understood the scale of what I had survived. The world was blanketed in white, a thick, endless shroud. What used to be flat ground was now rolling hills. What once was a clear path had become a trap. The storm had redrawn the entire landscape. There were no tracks. No sign of where I'd come from. No landmarks. Just memory. And instinct. I closed my eyes and took another breath. Tried to recall the sun's position, the direction the wind had come from before I found shelter. That was all I had left. The sky was clear but veiled by thin clouds. The light was scattered, offering no shadows, no guidance, no compass, no trail. Just emptiness. I started walking. One step at a time. My body pushed back. The cold still clung to me like a quiet shadow. But now it was bearable, a part of the environment, a part of me. My stomach growled. The last of the dried meat was gone. My body was burning fuel I didn't have anymore. But it wasn't hunger that drove me. It was something deeper. A promise. I walked for hours, maybe 3, maybe 6. Time in the Arctic stretches until it no longer matters. I knew the village was south, but everything looked unfamiliar. Even the rock formations that once guided me were buried beneath the snow. At times I considered shouting, but who would hear? The void doesn't answer, it only listens. And forgetting, that can drive a man mad. By mid-afternoon, when the sun looked like nothing more than a pale smudge in the sky, I saw them. Marks. Slight rises in the snow. Not fresh, but distinct. Maybe from my sled, days ago. I knelt down, touched the surface. The ice underneath was solid, the texture familiar. I knew this place. I was close. I walked on. My heart started to race. My mind fought against the hope. Hope in the Arctic is dangerous. It can lead you straight to death. But then, I saw, in the distance, a column of smoke rising straight into the sky. Dark, steady, the kind of smoke that only comes from a warm home. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I just walked, step by step. My body didn't have the strength for joy, but my eyes burned. And it wasn't the wind. It was the certainty. I was going to make it back. When I reached the outskirts of the village, the first, people spotted me. They were outside, cutting ice, feeding dogs, going about life as always. One of them looked at me for a full second, frozen, then he ran. Called out my name, others followed, hands grabbed me. Voices called me back. But I didn't answer. I just kept walking. Toward the fire, toward the center, toward the place where life was waiting. There, surrounded by my people, I finally understood what I had overcome. Not the ice, not the wind, but the emptiness. That deep void inside all of us when death sits beside you and quietly invites you to stop. I didn't stop, and because of that, I came back. It took 2 full days for the shaking to ease, 3 for the color to return to the tips of my fingers, 4 before I felt truly hungry again, and even then, the cold hadn't left me. Not the kind that touches your skin or freezes your bones, but the other kind, the one that settles in your soul after you've looked death in the eyes and it stared right back, unflinching, unforgiving. Back in the village, no one asked many questions. Here, when someone comes back from the edge, we all understand what that means. There's no need to explain. No need to put into words something that can only be felt. The elders looked at me with quiet respect. The younger ones kept their silence. And I didn't speak either. Not in those first few days. I needed to listen. To remember I was still part of this world. A week later, I went back to the place where it happened. Alone. Not as a challenge, but as acknowledgement. I moved slowly with alert eyes and an open heart. The hole had already frozen over. No sign of the struggle, no trace of what happened. The Arctic erases everything. It always has, but it leaves behind memories. And here, memories are sacred. I knelt on the ice and closed my eyes. I felt the wind on my face, gentler this time, almost kind. I heard the distant sounds of life, a dog's howl, the crack of a frozen tree, the quiet flutter of my own blinking. And in that full, echoing silence, I understood what I needed to understand. The Arctic didn't hate me. It wasn't trying to kill me. It was showing me who I was and who I still had the potential to become. In the city, they say the north is empty, that all there is up here is ice, death, and distance. But they've never lived beneath the snow. They don't know the signs, the whispers, the lessons hidden in every gust of wind. Up here the land speaks, the water teaches, the ice remembers, and the silence demands. Surviving that night didn't make me a hero. or an example. It simply made me part of a lineage, an invisible line that connects all who faced the white fury and returned to tell the tale. We don't defeat the cold. We learn to live with it, to respect it, and most of all, to listen. I learned there's a difference between being alive and choosing to live. During the storm, I had many chances to give up. When the ice cracked, when my body sank, when the wind knocked me down. But something made me keep going. Maybe it was my grandfather. Maybe it was my story. Maybe it was the land itself testing me. Whatever it was, I heard it, and I listened. Today, I carry more than scars. I carry the memory of the ice, the voice of the wind, and the understanding that every breath comes with a price. None of them are guaranteed. Every step in the white is a silent pact with nature. I respect you. You let me pass. The long nights still visit me. Sometimes I wake up hearing the ice crack beneath me, even though I'm safe in bed. Sometimes I feel the cold water creeping up my legs, and when that happens, I close my eyes and let the memory come, not to punish me, but to remind me of who I am. My name is Nunik, grandson of hunters, child of the cold, survivor of a night when the world tried to erase me and failed. As long as the wind blows in the north, I will know how to listen. As long as there's ice beneath my feet, I will know how to walk. And as long as silence speaks louder than death, I will always find my way back, because in the Arctic, life isn't a right, it's a daily victory, cold, lonely, sacred. You've just heard the true story of Nunik, a man who faced the full wrath of the Arctic and lived to tell it. But what happens to someone after they stare death in the face? What changes inside us when the ice tries to erase our existence and we resist? If this story moved you, leave a like. It tells us that it's worth continuing to share powerful and true stories like this one. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Here, every video is a journey of survival, of mystery, of resilience. Share this video with someone who loves real challenges, intense stories, and the kind of lessons only nature can teach, and we want to hear from you. What did you feel hearing this story? Have you ever faced something similar, or know someone who has? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to tell us where in the world you're watching from. We read everything. And don't go just yet, because in a few seconds, the next video will pop up on your screen. Another survival story from the Arctic that's guaranteed to give you chills. Click it, watch now, and keep exploring with us. We'll see you in the next one.